to the Kenyan historian. My name is Enoch Sikode. It's a wonderful afternoon, and it's always a pleasure meeting and having a talk with all of you here on the Kenyan historian. Hello, welcome. It's a beautiful afternoon, right? Where are you watching us from? Remember to join in, and when you join in, don't forget to tell us where you are joining in from and how you are following us. Mhm. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to talk about Raila Odinga's AU top job search and what we have seen in the last few days, especially. Let's try doing a mic test. Mic test. Last few days, especially. Iko sawa. Asante sana. Welcome to the Kenyan Historian, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Enoch Sikolia, and thanks for joining in. We are looking at Raila Odinga's top job, AU's top job search, the chairman of the African Union Commission. Virtually, if he gets the job, he will be one. He will be one of the most powerful men on the continent, and especially dictating the agenda of Africa. Remember, Africa has many agendas, and especially when you're talking about development. Raila Odinga has been the special envoy of the African Union Commission, has been before of the special envoy of the African Union on infrastructure development. So we are looking at a man with lots of experience, having uh, been in government of Kenya. Remember, he was Minister for Roads under President. No, he was Minister for Energy under President Daniel Arap Moi. He was Minister for Roads under President Mwai Kibaki. He was the country's Prime Minister for quite a long time. That's 5 years. It's a good long time. So Raila Odinga has lots of experiences when we talk about being an experienced African. Um, so we are looking at the chances of Raila Odinga becoming the top leader of the African Union Commission, being the chairperson of the African Union, um, the African Union. Now, let's go back to something very important. The recent health summit, let's say fertilizer and soil health summit that happened in Nairobi. Kama mliangalia vizuri, Raila Odinga was there. Na watu wengi waliweza kuchambua na kusema kwamba it seems Raila Odinga is capitalizing on every opportunity, and President William Ruto, especially, who is the chief campaigner, he said he will be the chief campaigner for Raila Odinga when it comes to the search for the top job. We have seen that the two are virtually taking every opportunity to campaign for Raila Odinga. It will not be an easy job. Remember, Somalia has also presented its former foreign affairs minister, and who is giving Raila Odinga a tough ride for the top seat. Remember, this seat right now, the opportunity is reserved for a country from Eastern Africa. And that is why Kenya is campaigning so hard. We have seen President Uhuru Kenyatta meet several presidents, several leaders from Africa. I remember it's the presidents that vote, a country votes. So Kenya has one single vote, Uganda has one single vote. So back to the meeting that happened in Nairobi at the KICC when we saw during the fertilizer and soil health summit, we saw Raila Odinga present, and when President William Ruto arrived, there was a firm handshake between President William Ruto. Remember, the two were contenders, the two were rivals in the last general election, but it was a firm handshake there. And President Ruto, before he introduced him to several presidents, you could see President William Ruto moving around, introducing him to several presidents that were present from Zambia, Malawi, Uganda. Remember, when you look at the history since Raila Odinga, the story of the Odinga's push for the AU seat, um, President William Ruto has moved to several countries, has also invited several countries, and we have seen Raila Odinga in attendance. So from where I sit is that President William Ruto is trying to get every opportunity to campaign for one Raila Amolo Odinga. When is the election, Enoch? Tough asks. The election will happen next year during the Africa Union Heads of State Summit. So it's happening next year. Remember, it's a vote. A country, it's a secret ballot. They do a secret ballot, and each member state has a vote. That is why, so when Raila Odinga announced, the first thing that they did is, together with President William Ruto, they flew to Uganda. Uganda is a very important country. The last time Kenya had a candidate for the seat, that is Amina Mohamed, former Foreign Affairs Minister. Uganda was accused of, let's say, not supporting Kenya during the voting period. Even though Uganda denied the allegations, they still stood for quite some time. That many people thought Uganda was not behaving like a good neighbor should do, and the support also didn't come from from I'm laughing because someone has said Ronaldo versus Messi. The support, like Kenya felt that also it did not receive maximum support from Tanzania as good neighbors in East Africa, leave alone in East Africa. So this time round, President William Ruto went to Tanzania. But one thing that was clear in the last election, I know there's a lot of money was spent campaigning for Amina Mohamed to become the AU chairperson. But there was a feeling that the proper campaign was not done. So we are hoping that this time around things will be different. Many people, like President William Ruto, as he's doing, they are trying to convince many states. But you see, so many things comes into play when uh, the the AU voting. I've attended one, and one thing I can tell you is that a lot of things comes into for. A lot of people are putting Raila Odinga as a front runner, given the massive support that Kenya has been receiving in recent days. But the fact that Somalia has received the endorsement from the Islamic States Organization or Association, let me just find the name. They have a name. Raila Odinga. Let me see. Islamic State. Where is Islamic State? We are trying to see. We are trying to see. We are trying to see. Yes, yes. There's the Islamic State Association. They, they declared support for Somalia's former Foreign Affairs Minister, um, and uh, and that has been a hurdle for Raila Odinga. But when you look at it, Kenya is giving a lot of hurdles. Some hurdles that were emerging were removed. If you remember, there was a proposal to have a gender role on Raila Odinga's on the quest for or anyone sitting for the next election. They wanted to be specifically for women, but that was changed, was altered, it was removed. And so at the end of it all, that hurdle was removed. So it's remaining Somalia. But in the last few days, we saw that Kenya has been urging Somalia to withdraw AU bid in support of Raila Odinga. So it remains to be seen if Somalia will prevail on their former foreign affairs minister to stand down. Her name is trying to find her exact name, Foreign Affairs Minister. So Kenya has been trying to convince Somalia to have her withdraw. Fauzia Yusuf Adam. So Fauzia Yusuf Adam looks at current looks like the person who will battle with Raila Odinga for the election of the AU Commission seat, and it's quite a tough race. So what Kenya is trying to do is we saw uh, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua hosting Somalia's Prime Minister on May 7th. During which the request for Somalia to drop its candidate, Fauzia Yusuf Adam, came up. And so we are still waiting for what will happen once affirmation comes, whether Somalia will agree or not to to support Raila Odinga. And it's a question that remains to be seen. So Odinga's journey to the AU has a lot of has received a lot of positivities. We saw Ghana declare its support for Raila Odinga when President William Ruto visited Ghana. We saw Zimbabwe. When President Ruto was in Zimbabwe, we saw Zimbabwe um, trying to give signal that it will support Raila Odinga's candidature. So it's quite a wait and see situation. But Kenya, it looks like Kenya is not letting it lose this time. We see that Kenya is trying to make sure that this time round it gets the seat because it's a very important seat. It's the chairperson of the African Union is a very powerful man as far as African issues are concerned, because the African Union Commission is the top organ that runs the organization that brings together the African community. But even as we look at it, many people are saying why Raila Odinga should be the chairperson of the African Union Commission. Looking at um, his political career, looking at what he can achieve, and looking at his network, people are saying he looks like the right man for the job, and especially when we are talking about uh, when we heard from uh, Nigeria's former president Olusegun Obasanjo, when Raila Odinga, the day Raila Odinga declared his intention to contest for the African Union Commission chairperson seat. So it looked like it was a blessing from Nigeria in the larger ECOWAS, yet to be affirmed, but many experts were drawing an explanation, was looking into it and saying probably the many member states from the West African Association um, probably will have given Obasanjo, because he's a senior statesman in Nigeria. He's a former president. He has good network. He still connects with most of the African states. And Obasanjo explained and said the reason he was rooting for Raila Odinga is because Raila Odinga has worked as a former prime minister, and his record is there that he's achieved quite a number of development during his time as minister and during his time as prime minister. Kenya saw some substantial growth, and especially in the departments that he was leading. Actually, there was a time where people have asked me if Raila Odinga will have become the president of Kenya many years ago. I normally say a young Raila Odinga, that was from when you look at 2007, 2002, right? Like let me just put it in 2007. Um, for me, from where I sit, I think Kenya could have changed in many things or many faces. than we think. Hate him or love him, Raila has remained with the same. There are people who say he's a conman, political conman. There are people who say he's a political schemer. There are people who say that Raila Odinga is a good man, good politician. Yes, everyone, that's how human beings are. When we interact, we look at it, you analyze people. People have different ways of describing people depending on how the interaction and their relationship went. People don't judge you because mostly of what you've done, but how you interacted, and especially the personal at the personal level. That is why people will label you a thief. That's how people will label you a very good man. Very not because you did a wonderful job, but for me, I'm looking at Raila Odinga in a different way. I'm looking at a politician who was able to to remain relevant even out of government for more than 10 years now. More than 10 years. Since 2013, Raila Odinga has not been in government. And yet he has remained relevant for that particular time. So my prayer and my hope is that probably if he gets the Africa Union chairperson seat, the African Union Commission chairperson seat. See, those are two different things. I see people confuse them. The African Union is the organization that brings together the African countries that are member states. And there are two seats. There is the African Union chairman or chairperson, and there is the African Union Commission chairperson. These two are different. The African Union chairperson, is usually a president of a member state. Yeah, it's usually a president of a member state. That one, it's reserved for president, a sitting president of a member state. And then there is the African Union chairperson seat. Now, this seat is reserved for former presidents, former or current foreign affairs foreign affairs members. They're called what? Former foreign affairs former foreign affairs ministers from member states. So they are reserved that job. So Raila Odinga's qualification is that he was a former prime minister. Former prime ministers, while they're given the opportunity to vie for the chairperson of the African Union Commission. So Raila Odinga eligibility is there, but you see, there's the academic qualification where you remember some people are asking, like, I had someone called the Kimilili member of parliament, Didmas. Hey, he called it Didmas, asked whether Raila Odinga had papers. I don't think Raila Odinga will be out of his senses, for me, where I sit, to apply for a job when he knows he doesn't qualify and he doesn't have the requisite documents as far as qualifications is concerned. So for me, I think Raila Odinga will not be that stupid. Number two, Raila Odinga has contested for the president. When we are talking about someone asking the credentials of Raila Odinga as far as being a graduate, some ask, have you seen the papers of Raila Odinga? You see, if I'm learned, I don't have to go shouting and giving out my certificates and showing people, oh, okay, these are my papers, I'm learned. So, see, as long as the relevant bodies that counter check documents give you a go ahead, right? For example, Raila Odinga has vied for the presidency since the new constitution came into play, has vied 3 times, 2017 and 2022. You can't tell me that IEBC at those occasions never looked into Raila Odinga's papers and said, okay, this man is not a degree holder. So, as far as issues of qualifications are concerned, we leave it to the African Union Commission that will be vetting, that vets the candidates for those who will be vying, like, for example, after the application. I think the application deadline was passed or something like that. Mm. So I'm trying to look at someone who has written something here. He says, why I want Raila Odinga in Addis Ababa to hold the AU top job. So for him, he looked at Raila Odinga's speech when standing beside Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, some of the issues that Raila Odinga said that needs to be addressed. So top on his analysis was the story of the disgust that is usually there when you look at African migrants that die in the Mediterranean Sea while attempting to cross over to Europe aboard overloaded rickety boats. So he looked at it and he said, that is disgusting. The things that when you see African migrants, people trying to cross Mediterranean, what are they going to look for in Europe is opportunities. You can never blame them. You blame the situation at home because many people try to cross from Africa because of the issues that the continent is facing, and especially when we begin from the level of poverty that bedevils the continent. And yet, some of the countries in Africa that are struggling, struggling with poverty, struggling, people facing some of the tough situations I've ever seen. They are very rich in minerals, very rich. I've been to Congo, and this is what I looked at Congo and I saw is that Congo looks like paradise, but it feels like hell. Young children displaced from their homes. Those are the pictures you see. Living in camps, being rained on, because in Congo it rains every single day. Like I can easily say it rains almost every single minute. That is Eastern Congo. When we're talking about areas of southern and northern Kivu in Eastern Congo, rich areas, mineral rich. If you want to find diamonds, you'll find in Congo. If you want to find gold, you find in Congo. If you want to find rubber that is used to manufacture tires and everything, many items you find in Congo. You want a place that is agriculture rich, you find in Congo. Yet the Congolese are some of the poorest people on the planet. That is the African story. And that is what Raila Odinga said he's going to look at. Why do Africans have to die in the Mediterranean trying to look for opportunities abroad? So, it is when you look at President Uhuru Kenyatta, former president, that's retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he spoke on at the 42nd Organization of Trade Union Unity in Nairobi, that was September 2019, Uhuru talked about this issue. He said, it is very disheartening to our sons and daughters lose life crossing the Mediterranean, being humiliated in foreign lands, because we cannot get together and grow our own prosperity and provide employment and hope for them. And I want to emphasize on the word, when you look at the word hope, that is where we fail as African states. These young men have lost hope. So some of them, when you interview them, what do they say? They say, it's better to die in an ocean than to live in poverty, than live in hopelessness. So this is a person who is now ready to die in the Mediterranean Sea than to remain at home. The situation is so bad. So are we looking at a situation where is Raila Odinga one of those people who can come in and say we need change in Africa? Because some of the things the African Union has been accused, the African Union has been accused of lack of teeth. It speaks, it says, and the things remain the same. True, the things remain the same. We've had of African people, African presidents, when they come to power. Like, for example, when we just look at the Kenyan, the Ugandan story, in 1986, I watched the speech, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, a young Ugandan president who had come to power after toppling the notorious dictator Idi Amin. President Museveni, in his speech, he talked about things you can only admire and hope for. He looked like this revolutionist who was going to change Tanzania forever. That Tanzania was going to be, not Tanzania, Uganda, that Uganda was going to become one of the best countries in Africa, and that Uganda was going to be a top economy. Yes, when you look at Uganda's history, you look that there is peace in Uganda, substantial peace since Museveni took over. There was a lot of improvement. Economic development was realized as compared to the presidents who are there before him. But the question is, when you look at his speech that he made in 1986 after becoming the president, and look at Uganda today, and look at his presidency, and especially after the turn of the new millennium in 2000, you will see that he did little to live to his promise. He did so little to live to his promise. His promise was so huge, was up there. So when we're looking at Odinga, the question is, will Raila Odinga be able to challenge some of these presidents and talk sense into them? Someone says he loves Raila Odinga's courage. He says positive courage is one thing missing from Africa's political class. Where courage exists, it is usually for wrong reasons, intentions, and purposes such as exterminating political rivals, frustrating democracy, plunder of national resources, and funding of strife. So he says Raila Odinga has courage. But when you look at courage in Africa, it has been for the wrong reasons. So he says Raila Odinga has the years demonstrated that he can boldly confront an issue with which others are reluctant to deliberate on. He goes on to say Africa needs reforms. In fact, reforms at the African Union are long overdue. Raila's presence in Addis Ababa is all the continent needs to trigger it into action. He has repeatedly expressed his desire to engage the rest of Africa on matters of Pan-Africanism, trade, culture, and movement of goods. Coups, ethnic or political violence, election rigging, and fighting over polls results, famine and starvation, dictatorship, corruption, and diseases are what form the images that have defined Africa for the past 5 decades. Most of the 55 African countries attained independence more than half a century ago. The continent should be now have devised its own course politically and economically. Now, unfortunately, from what I've just read here, unfortunately, Africa has not defined its course. When you look at the history of Africa, I look at a country that is supposed to, a continent that is supposed to be very rich because it has rich resources. Now, one thing that I normally look at Africa, because I've traveled quite a bit, and you go to countries like China. Let me use the example of the China, the People's Republic of China. When you look at China, China did not become rich because of taxation. Because in Africa, tax is what most presidents, when they come into power, they look at overtaxing people. Taxes are good for running the government because it is how governments get revenue. But you cannot get revenue by taxing people and companies, because when you tax, and especially if they are foreign companies, they just fold and move to another country. We have seen in Kenya, quite a number of countries have folded and migrated to Rwanda, Tanzania. Our tax regime sometimes is wanting because we are just overtaxed. But this is how China became very rich. China became rich. Now it's the second powerful country in terms of economy in the world after the United States. Some actually say it could be the leading one, but figures or statistics say it is the second most powerful country in terms of the economy. Now, when we look at it, China became powerful by targeting foreign investment. And this is how we targeted foreign investment. When China saw an opportunity, the opportunity came in a bad state because they say you become rich by offering a solution to a problem. Most companies in the world were facing challenges, and this challenge was related to cost of production. It was just becoming too much for companies. They were struggling. And China approached some of these companies and said, you know what, the cost of production can help you reduce the cost of production. This, we have a huge population. Number two, we have manpower. Now, which is the huge population will give you manpower, which could be, by definition, could be cheap because from any cadre, when you compare paying people in Europe and paying people in China, it was low in terms of the wage bill for companies to run in Europe and China than to run in Europe and the United States. So many companies ran to China and set up production facilities in China. Factories were there. China was now producing, yes, the softwares and whatever were not in China probably at that time, but factories were there. And do you know what factories were doing? They were directly employing Chinese people. So there was an agreement that a certain percentage of the employees should come from China, from the local people. So this is how China benefited. Number one, there were now factories, many factories to be taxed. Many Chinese people were employed. So there were many people being taxed. So China was growing its taxable income. Taxable. The pool of people to be taxed were too many, were many. And now the government started to be rich, started to have many, they call what? Started to have a lot of money coming in from the companies, coming in from the people they were taxing. So all of a sudden, China had money to push its agenda. Now, when it started, one of the area that I talk about most, and okay, so one thing that I talk about how China was smart was about when it started the issue of when it wanted to put China on what we call the railway network. It wanted to improve its railway connectivity. But China did not have engineers. The technology, the railway technology was not up to date. So this is what China did. It went to foreign companies and told them to come and do the railway network in China. By that time, and especially when you're talking about the high-speed railway network, the high speed. So, but one of the caveats China put in was that You don't just come in, you employ our people, but you also teach our people the technology. So it was written there. We are giving you a contract to build a railway network in China, but teach our engineers the technology you have. Today, China is leading in terms of rail network. Is leading. It has the highest number of speed trains. It has the biggest network of railway line in the whole world. So it is about strategy. That is why they say in the 1940s, China was as poor as Kenya. Many Chinese people were poor. Today, the Chinese people are not poor. And it's about leadership. So that's why I go back. If Raila Odinga wins the AU commission, it's the AU commission, because I've seen many people write AU chairmanship, and I feel like, and even journalists, this article here was written by Kwaera, but it says AU chairmanship. It's AU commission chairmanship. The AU chairmanship is reserved for a sitting president of a member state, and it's rotation. It moves around. Yeah, even the AU commission chairperson seat is rotational, moves around. Now it's the time for East Africa, and that is why Kenyans are happy. I'm sure Kenyans are happy. Raila Odinga is one of us. He's our leader here in Kenya. So for me, for example, I'm happy because Raila Odinga, if he gets the chairmanship of the A Commission, I will want to see. It will help us gauge what if we had President Raila Odinga. He has never been president. He's tried 5 times. Is it 5 times? 1997, 2007, 2013, 2013, 2017, 2022. 5 times he has tried. 5 times he has failed. We haven't given him a chance. So probably the AU chairperson, the AU Commission chairperson seat will give us a glance on what kind of a leader will Raila Odinga will have been if we gave him the presidency. Will Kenyans regret? Well, probably yes. Let's hope so. I would want a positive on that. I want Raila Odinga to win and be our push the African agenda. So there was a time in March when Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi was in Ethiopia for the Executive Council's meeting, the African Union Executive Council's meeting that is made up of foreign ministers. So this is what Musalia Mudavadi said. This is a major breakthrough for the Eastern Africa region to present candidates for the position of chairperson of the AU Commission. At that particular time, people were still wondering if East Africa community, if it was going to the Eastern Africa. They were not sure because there was a time, because the North Africa has also never had a chance. So there was a position of whether we will have Raila Odinga, like for example, Eastern Africa will be battling with North Africa for the position. Now, the challenge for William Ruto and Raila Odinga now is to build blocks, is to approach these blocks, because Africa has several blocks. We have the Francophone, the Anglophone. The Francophone are French-speaking countries, where now Musa Faki, the current chairperson of the AU Commission, is from, because remember, he's from Chad. He was the former foreign affairs minister from Chad. And so we are looking at, if Raila Odinga wants to succeed, he has to approach these blocks, Francophone, Anglophone, make sure that all the boxes tick before January next year. And he will be, many people are saying Raila Odinga stands a chance. Yes, He's the leading candidate as far as analyses are concerned, and as far as the experts I've talked to are concerned, is that Raila Odinga is headed for Addis Ababa. But it is a journey, and we wait to see how the campaigns will go. William Ruto has been very active. The president of the Republic of Kenya has been very active on the campaign trail. We saw him. I've seen him in West Africa campaigning for Raila Odinga. I've seen him in South Africa campaigning for Raila Odinga. And every opportunity he gets, he campaigns for Raila Odinga. We saw when Ahmed Abiy, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, was here. Ruto threw in a word, not in public, but we saw him tell us that he campaigned for Raila Amolo Odinga. And many occasions we have seen when a sitting president a sitting president visits Kenya, Raila Odinga sneaks in. I'm not sure if Raila Odinga can just walk from his home and walk to State House and sneak into a meeting between presidents, the president of Kenya and a visiting president. I don't think so. So I hope the job that is being done surpasses the job that was done in 2017 when Amina Mohammed contested. Tough Mujingo Jong says when election have answered, the election will happen in January next year during the African Union Heads of State Summit. Ronaldo versus Messi, I've talked about it. I just laughed. I didn't talk about it. It says Ronaldo and Messi, the call shots. Lawrence Murithi, good job. Raila keeps the government at toe. Yes, I've talked about it. Raila Odinga is good at going toe to toe with anyone and everyone. And that the articles I've quoted, you will hear some people saying that the fact that Raila Odinga has put governments whenever they are not working is one of the things that we need at the African Union, because the African Union needs people who can push these presidents of ours from South Africa to North Africa to West Africa to Eastern Africa. We need a paradigm shift. Is Raila Odinga the person to do that? Let's hope so. Let's hope that the support we are giving Raila Odinga from Kenya can emanate across Africa, that he leads the Africa Union. Now, for you to understand why that seat is important, let me tell you the role of the African Union chairperson. Role of African Union chairperson. I'm typing here on my computer, so don't shangaa nafanya nini. Ninajaribu kuangalia role of the African Union chairperson. The chairperson's functions include overall responsibility for the Commission's administration and finances, promoting and popularizing the AU's objectives and enhancing its performance, consulting and coordinating with key stakeholders like member states, development partners, RECs, etc., appointing and managing commission staff, acting as acting as a depository for all AU and OAU treaties and legal instruments. So he's the legal, let me say, he's the signatory. I remember one of my colleagues when I was doing Alizema is the signatory. He's the legal representative of the union. So, unaona, the very important. So, who does he report to? If Raila Odinga becomes the president of the AU Commission, he will report to the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government and the AU Executive Council. Who is the AU Executive Council? The AU Executive Council comprises of foreign ministers from member states. He's an elected official. He lives in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He is on 7 in terms of job group level 7. The chairperson of the African Union Commission is the chief executive officer, is the CEO, legal representative of the African Union, and the accounting officer of the Union. The chairperson of the Commission is a transformative leadership role responsible for driving the performance of the AU Commission in delivering the continental vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. The chairperson is directly responsible to the Executive Council for the discharge of his or her duties. The chairperson of the Commission shall have a high commitment to Pan-Africa values and the guiding principles of the African Union. Now, when you look at the current state of Africa, you ask yourself is what rate can you give Musa Faki? Under his leadership, we have seen Sudan go into turmoil, serious fight. Yes, Sudan's conflict, a long, decades-long conflict. But under his leadership, we have seen some countries now just go into flames. Like when we are talking about the case of Sudan, it's more than a year since violence erupted in Sudan, when two forces and two military generals started to quarrel. When we are talking about the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, then we are talking about the army, which is Sudan's army. When they started to quarrel, it's been a year. Many people have been displaced. When you go to Chad, you'll feel sorry for the people of Sudan. When you go to Central African Republic, millions and millions of people have been displaced and they live in that country. Now, they live in camps. People who had homes, people who are living in Khartoum, not Khartoum, yes, in Khartoum. People who are living in Khartoum today live in camps. They had their own homes. Today, they live in shanties. They don't know what their future holds. Young kids who are in schools, good schools, some in private schools, some with hope of becoming future leaders. Now they're hopeless. That is the situation. So, Musa Faki, I don't know. But whoever comes in as the chairperson of the Africa Union Commission needs to be that person who can try to forge and come up with ways of how the African Union can help Africa deal with the issues of coups and political stability. Political stability is missing in many African countries, and that is an issue that I hope whoever becomes the chairperson, which I hope will be Raila Odinga, will look into. Looking at the Sahel region, where now extremists have taken over in most of the villages. They're controlling villages, and there is nothing that governments have done and succeeded. Most of them have failed. We have seen even in countries like Mali, where French soldiers have come in, they have failed. Some say some of these problems are created by international participants. But I normally ask, even if they're bringing guns, the problem starts with us. Because it's us who are who are making ripe ground to be manipulated. Because no one can manipulate a person mwenye amejipanga. Sisi kuanga tukwangi tumejipanga, like an African community. Okay, back to Raila Odinga. So, as I had talked earlier, we have seen Raila Odinga. I've seen Kenya's consolidated efforts to push for Somalia to withdraw their candidate from contesting for the position of the Africa Union Chairperson Commission seat. I think it's just Raila Odinga and her, and the battle looks stiff. And that is why many people are saying Raila Odinga is the next Africa Union chairperson. I believe so. I hope so. And I'm praying for that to happen because of many reasons. I've already explained some of the reasons very clearly. One fundamental reason is that we never gave Raila Odinga the chance as a country. We never gave Raila Odinga a chance to be the president of Kenya. He has vied for 5 years. Maybe let's rule out 1997. There are many things at play. He was not a popular candidate. Daniel Arap Moi was still the president, and the opposition was still divided, and everything like that. So he was a young man, young member of parliament. After his first term, you remember, he was first elected as member of parliament in 1992, following the first country's multi-party elections. Yeah, you had me one. Kenya was all along, almost like all along. Even during Kenyatta's time, look, yeah, there were, I remember the KPU and everything, but there was always heavy crackdown on opposition parties. So most of the times they never amounted to anything. So thank you so much, guys, for joining in. I don't know if you have a question. If you have a question, you can ask. But I want to say thank you for watching the Kenyan Historian live. Asante sana. Be blessed. And let's go swali in the next 2 minutes. Still waiting. If there is a question, we can go ahead. Question. It seems there's no question. Swali jamani, swali. Ni swali. Swali jamani. Haya, asanteni sana kwa kujiunga nami siku ya leo. Hadi wakati mwingine. Mbarikiwe sana sana. Mbarikiwe, 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 mbarikiwe sana, Thanks, guys, especially those who responded, those who came in with questions. Taf Mjingjong, Cold Shots, Lawrence Mrithi, this was, is it that or dude? Talk show. Asante sana. Be blessed for watching the Kenyan Historian. It was and it has been always a pleasure of hooking up with you guys and having a little chat here and there. And we really appreciate you for that. Asanteni sana. Asanteni sana. Kuna wengi ambao wanakuja na naona watu wanarudi. Naona watu wanarudi. Haya, let's have another, we will have another topic probably from 8 p.m. We'll have another topic. We'll have a discussion from around 8 p.m. Asante sana. Na mbarikiwe. Mbarikiwe.